guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, gonna go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. That's from a guy, he is 43 years old, and he shares his story from darn close to 30 years ago when he was 15, when he made the colossal mistake of dating and then getting a relationship with the town bicycle. And let me tell you guys, she was truly the town bicycle. But being young and dumb and full of you-know-what, that was the last thing he was thinking about. And he comes this close. So not just ruining his life, but his entire future at that young age because of her. Fortunately, our guy sees the light and sends her packing, and his life is doing great ever since, and her life not so much. And let this be a perfectly good example to show you guys how any guy at any age can let the wrong woman in and build an attachment and ruin everything. You got to be so careful here. And the great thing is you can make a change, but the longer with these types, the more damage can cause. Now, it's a longer story, but it's a good one. And again, by the way, gentlemen, you're going to see also this guy, he's going to frustrate you in the way he behaves at a lot of points, but you're going to find out his upbringing here. It ain't pretty, and you can see why so young he made a lot of the mistakes he did. So it starts off, it says, "Hello, SSM. First of all, I'd like to say hello and thank you for all the work that you've done. It is very much needed in order for our future generations of men to be so strong. I'm 43 years old, and I grew up in a small Texas town, population under 13,000. The closest city at the time was 1 hour away, population 100,000, with a bunch of tiny towns in between. I grew up in a single-parent household, single-mom household, and I had 3 siblings, and there are 3 baby daddies in all." Bro, holy crap. So I don't need to say it. You grew up without a dad, single mom raised the house, you have 3 other siblings, and those siblings came out from 3 different baby daddies. Good Lord. Needless to say, your mom doesn't sound like the best choice in men. Now imagine growing up in this environment, gentlemen, and you're going to see why this guy does some of the things he does. But you can't overcome anything. The only positive male role models in my life I had were my grandfather and my uncle, who both worked like 80-plus hours per week. I spent the better part of my youth watching TV and babysitting my younger brother. In that time, I watched a lot of rom-coms and Hallmark-esque movies, so my experience in dating was already stunted when I started. I'd like to share my story with you, brother. You spent watching the environment you grew up in, and then watching all the rom-coms and all that crap. Now, there obviously wasn't the Hallmark channel back then, but you're just talking about movies and shows that were like what they have on the Hallmark channel nowadays. You are just programming yourself to be just walked all over. For the sake of the story, I'll call myself Jay, and my ex is Nikki. I was very much the nerd growing up. There's a fucking surprise. A straight A student, even though through high school, I read books a lot and played video games and Dungeons & Dragons with my nerdy friends. I learned early on I had anger issues, so I started playing sports in middle school. I also started lifting weights and running, and they were part of my routine for most of my life. I also boxed and trained in MMA from 14 years old until my early 20s, and I met Nikki in my freshman year of high school. She was 2 years older than me, and she popped up in my friend group out of nowhere. Okay, the fact that you grew up in the household you did, but you still were doing straight A's in school up until Nikki, and eventually sports and all that stuff. So you had your nerd qualities, but you at least were playing sports, and eventually started boxing and MMA when you were 14 and all that. Now, they didn't call it MMA back then, I don't think, but there was boxing schools and stuff like that. Probably it was equivalent to MMA back then. Myself and my older brother and our friend group all hung out at a family-friendly business that our friends and brother's parents own. Nikki had started coming around, and she was gorgeous. This is the first thing he says about her. Not her winning personality, she was gorgeous. She was 5'4", long, dirty blonde hair, bright blue eyes, D cups, of course, so every guy in our group was going for her. Of course. One night, I decided to shoot my shot. She had her own car, and towards the end of the night, I asked her if me and my cousin could cruise along with her and her bestie, and they both enthusiastically agreed. Well, the fact that you're 2 years younger, and she was interested in hanging out with you and all that, that says a lot. So obviously you weren't the nerd type that you thought. Obviously, by that point, when you met her, you started in your lifting weights and MMA, so you were balanced. She liked you, fine. But she also knows that 17 years old, 16, 17 years old and you're 14 or 15, she can also control you. Let's be honest. You can be the stable guy, and she can control you and have her fun. It's no different from an early age, guys. Well, we cruised for a couple hours getting to know each other, and when they dropped us off at my house, my cousin and her bestie both got out of the car to hug while I stayed in the car and asked for a goodnight kiss, which he happily obliged to me. Okay, you were confident enough to go for that. You asked for a goodnight kiss? Unless you're just being some cocky guy like, well, where's my kiss, baby? Or whatever. Well, I fell hard immediately. Smack! Well, there you go. But you know what? You're 15, and those big D-cup titties in that 5'4" frame, I can see where that happened. We hung out a few times during the next couple weeks, but she hung out with other people too, and she loved to party. Party girls aren't girlfriends, man. They're girls you can have fun with and get experience with. But remember, guys, he was 15, watched the rom-coms, raised by a single mom. The siblings were from 3 different baby daddies. His situation's a mess. It was at that point in my life I started drinking. At 15, smack. I don't mind you. You're going to do what teenagers do, man. I did the same thing, but I don't advise it. I really didn't have a structured daily routine because I was by myself a lot. Most of my friends and my older brother were already drinking by then too. Nikki and I were supposed to hang out one Friday night, but she never showed up. My older brother told me she was at a party that he was at, and she left with a guy I didn't care for. Dude, she's a town bicycle. What do you expect? But you were probably like, we had such a connection. What the hell? Well, Saturday night rolls around, and some of my friends and I were hanging out at my house when I noticed my brother sitting on the porch looking very sad. When I asked him what was up, he told me that he and Nikki had been hanging out, and that shortly before coming home, he saw her car pull into an abandoned building, so he followed her. When he stopped to look in, she was hooking up with his best friend. Well, it's not like young you and her were exclusive. You liked her, but she has plenty of dudes. And by the way, so the brother likes her too. So you and your older brother are both hot for the same girl. This is not good. Bros before hoes, bro. My brother was heartbroken. I was upset, but not extremely, because she and I weren't together. He and I had a conversation about her, and I asked if he realized that I'd been hanging out with her too, to which he nodded yes. He had hoped she would eventually commit to him. We shared a few drinks, and I told him to forget about her, and he suggested I do the same. Shared a few drinks. Okay, I know you're in Texas, and you're out in the country, and this is obviously decades ago, so this is not that unheard of. And I don't know where the hell your mom is during this whole thing, but still. I had no problem getting boozed by the time I was 16. One of my best friends played football, and even though he was younger than me, I was 16 and he was 15, he looked like he was like 23 years old. Fucking full beard, 6'2", big dude. He'd walk in and get us all the beer we wanted at 15, 16 years old. No joke. Later that night, Nikki came to my house and asked if we could talk. So we sat in the car in my driveway. Well, I hope she used some mouthwash before she came over to your house. I told her I knew about her and the guy that she was with at the abandoned building, but she denied doing anything with him. She explained that she only got advice from him about what she should do or date me or my brother. Yeah, get the fuck out of here. And young you was like, oh, okay, that sounds good to me. I believed her. Smack. So I asked her what she wanted, and she said that she wanted to be with me. I told her she wanted me, it had to be monogamous. Just me and her, and she agreed. Yeah, she's there crossing her fingers and crossing her toes and crossing her legs. It's the only time her legs are crossed. And like, okay. Meanwhile, you really think she's going to commit to you? But you were young, and she was beautiful, physically beautiful. I lost my virginity to her that night, and I was completely blinded by it. I couldn't see who she really was. In fairness, man, most guys your age in that situation wouldn't have seen through it either. I was the same naive jackass then too. You know, a lot of guys, a lot of people make it out to be that the girl falls in love and is obsessed with the guy who took her virginity. Guess what? Guys do it too. Well, soon after this, Nikki's mom kicked her out of her house because she partied all the time. That's a sign. My mom felt bad for her and let her move in, and where we lived, you could sign yourself out of high school at 16, so she dropped out. Okay, number one, you know it's bad when her mother kicks her out for partying too much. Your mom, who probably isn't that much different than Nikki here, let's be honest here, lets her come stay with you, and your brother had the hots for her, and you're involved with her and all under the same roof. This is a disaster. And she drops out of high school. Yeah, there's a winner. Of course, being new to sex and being a testosterone-filled teen, I stopped going to school as much as I could because I didn't want to leave the house. Smack, smack, smack. Remember, went from straight A's and having a balance of D&D and straight A's and hitting the gym and MMA or boxing. You're already destroying your life because of this young piece of ass. This is where it starts, guys. You need to be in school, dude. She would still party at night, and sometimes with me, and sometimes not. Sometimes she'd show up at home at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, drunk or hungover. What the fuck is wrong with your mom? Well, we know your mom's not there, and your mom is probably just like Nikki. During that time, my friends told me to leave her because she'd been hooking up with other guys at those parties if I wasn't there, but I couldn't be reasoned with. No, not Nikki. Not my girl. She said she loved me. I even had a classmate call me and tell me to break up with her because the classmate's older brother had slept with Nikki at the party the night before my classmate called me. I'd be mad at her, but I didn't want to lose her, and she would always have someone to accuse. The most common answer being that they are lying because they want to F her too. And you're thinking, that's true, they all want to sleep with her, therefore they're lying. They're jealous of our love. Bullshit, man, they're telling you the truth. But yes, believe me, I'm sure they all wanted to nail her. Well, we dated for 3 years, and during that time, my life was flipped upside down. Smack! You let it be flipped upside down, genius. But you know what? Again, you were really young, and you had no role models. Where was your grandpa? Where was your uncle who were role models? I'm sure they had words with you about freaking not going to school and being with this broad. I stopped going to school my sophomore year and lost a lot of credits for that year. Smack! Dumbass. Great job. When are you going to go work at Domino's Pizza, and that's going to... Unless you're going to work at Domino's and become assistant manager, then manager, and have the brains to start your own business and franchise, I don't see your future working flipping pizzas at Domino's or something equivalent. Stay in school, guys. I dropped out of sports and I stopped hanging out with my friends because they were a bad influence on me, according to Nikki. I started working and got an efficiency apartment. She lived there with me and my older brother. Towards the end of the relationship, a few big things happened between us that finally pulled my head out of the fog. You mean pulled your head out of your ass? Nikki was at home with me one night until she thought I was sleeping. She left and I saw her get into her sister's boyfriend's car and leave. I didn't sleep and she came home around 7 o'clock in the morning drunk. I confronted her and she admitted to leaving with him but swore they just hung out. Yeah, okay, honey. I ended up kicking her out of the apartment. About fucking time. Later that day, I saw her cruising with my little sister, and I caught up with my sister afterwards, who told me they went and hung out with the guy that my brother found Nikki hooking up with behind the abandoned building. I bet she's been hooking up with that guy ever since. The following Friday, she and I were invited to a concert in that big city down the road, and we went together and ended up staying the night with members of the band. They were friends of mine. You kicked her out of your apartment. Why the fuck are you hanging out with her? I assume that was when you broke up with her, but no, you were just kicking her out because you were mad. You think she's going to change? But you're thinking about those D-cup titties bouncing in your face. The problem is those D-cups are everywhere for everyone. I passed out drunk at the after party and woke up to some girls trying to convince her to sleep with a member of the band. When I asked her what she was doing, she told me to go back to sleep, and she followed those girls into the band member's room. How much suffering do you have to go through, Amiga, till you finally completely rid yourself of her? This is why I'm doing this story, guys. Again, how a guy's attraction for a hot girl can completely derail so many elements of his life. The ride home was awkward, to say the least, because I was pretty sure what happened. What do you think, dude? After we got back home, I dumped her. I got my shit together, got re-enrolled at high school, and started focusing on graduating. This was my junior year in high school. Thank God. Thank God. I think because you had such good grades beforehand, you probably had somebody in the faculty there that probably stood up for you and said, okay, he was a dumb shit here, but he has promise. He could probably make up for things and get back on track. During this time period, Nikki was still around, but we were not together. But she was still in your life. You got back your junior year, but she was still in your life. My friends found me a rebound girl. I went out with a new girl at school, along with my best friend and his girlfriend. The new girl was pretty and fun, and we ended up hooking up later that night, and while we were hooking up, there was a knock on my apartment door. Uh, I stopped and answered the door, and it was Nikki screaming at me and accusing me of cheating on her with a new girl. She's screaming at you for cheating. She's been cheating on you the whole relationship. She's psycho. At this point, the new girl got dressed and left, and my friend and his girl followed her out and shut the door. Then, and Nikki kicked the crap out of me. Well, so much for all your boxing skills, but I guess you weren't going to hit a girl. I rolled into a ball and took the ass whooping, and she told me everything. She told me how she sucked off my brother's friend behind the abandoned building that night, and she took my V card. She also effed my sister's boyfriend, and how she had an orgy with that band member and those girls, and how my sister drove her over to the abandoned building guy's apartment, and blah, blah, blah. Well, your sister's obviously a piece of shit, too. I'd have nothing to do with her. So she freaks out because you get a new girl, beats the crap out of you because you're not going to fight back because you're going to end up in jail. And then she proceeds to tell you all these things to hurt you. Yeah, what a great girl that you wasted all these years with. The next day, another friend asked me if I wanted to ride to the park with him at a lunch break, so I went. I pulled up just in time to see the new girl get absolutely pummeled by Nikki. I felt bad, but I didn't move a muscle. You fucking pussy. Jesus. It goes to show you could be taking the boxing classes and everything, but inside you were jello. After that series of events, I completely stopped being a nice guy. I just didn't care, and I was numb to everybody and everything for a while. I completely blocked Nikki out of my life. Okay, thank God. She's finally out. Because remember, he said that she was in his life for like 3 years, 15 to 18. So even though he broke up with her, she was still in his life until this point. I went back to training, boxing, lifting weights, running, and all that, and I graduated. It's true, though, that they always come back. Of course they always come back. Because they see you as a sucker. Oh, he'll forgive me. Not to mention, doesn't sound like she has a job, doesn't sound like she has a place to live. She just goes and freeloads up the next sucker. Well, Nikki dated my cousin for a year. What a dumbass. You think the cousin didn't know what was going on with you and her? He lived directly across the street from my mom. One day when I was at my mom's house sitting, while she was out of town, there was a knock on the door. I answered, and it was Nikki. She was crying and asked if she could come in. Uh-huh. At this point, I had changed quite a bit. I didn't date, just had casual hookups. I treated most girls indifferently and never gave them much attention, and pretty much didn't worry about women at all. Well, after what you went through, who can blame you? I let her in, and she begged and pleaded with me to take her back. Of course she does. That she regretted cheating on me and hurting me. Yeah, I can tell. She told me she would do anything and everything I told her to do, and that I could have her in any way that I wanted if I let her move in with me, and that we could just start over. Yeah, because our relationship was so wonderful. Yeah, come back in, sweetie. Yeah, why would I want to do everything and anything to you when every other guy's done everything and anything to you, too? She told me that my cousin was super jealous, and he put his hands on her during the relationship, and before I could respond, she walked over and kissed me. Is this the same girl that beat you up a year earlier because you were cheating on her? Now, I could have just told her to get out, but instead I gave her the best stare I could ever give her during our time together, and then told her she had to get out. Smack! What if she got pregnant then, dude? What if she was already pregnant and was coming to you? You slept with her. It's your baby. That was stupid. Or accused you of doing things against her will. Her jaw dropped. She didn't cry, just looked confused. As she was walking out of the house, my cousin walked over to the edge of the yard, staring daggers through her. He didn't dare look up at me, though. He knew better. They left, and I haven't talked to either one of them since. I was 18, and that was 25 years ago. Dude, please tell me you no longer live in that town and have anything to do with all these fucking people. My God. This goes to show you guys where the impact your life can be and have with who raises you and who your surroundings and all that. I stayed single for 3 years after that. I didn't try to date at all. I don't blame you. I stopped being the nice guy that I saw in all those stupid rom-coms and basically acted like an a-hole to girls, and I got plenty of female attention. Well, that's how it works. I focused on work and school for the most part. Good. So you're an a-hole. You became an a-hole with a brain. You went from the nice guy, rom-com watching guy, to being shown reality through Nikki, and then you were the a-hole, didn't take any shit, but obviously you were intelligent because you did well in school. That's the balance to be. Well, I met my now wife out of the blue. Uh-huh. She was from one of those smaller towns around my town and went to college with my best friend and a girl he was seeing. He introduced us, and we all hung out, and she and I talked and got to know each other until 4 o'clock that night. So at this point, then, I guess you're out of college, or whatever, 22, 21 years old. I had a good time, and he warned me that she wasn't the sleep around type. So if I was looking to hook up, I'd be disappointed. You're probably like, thank God, it's about time to eat one of those. I honestly wasn't worried about that at the time. She was tall and cute, and she was definitely a sweetheart. She was 18, and I was 22 at the time. I didn't get her number, and I stopped going out as much as I didn't see her again for 2 years. Ah, how interesting. You meet, click, but then nothing for 2 years. I started a full-time government job and ran into her there after she started working there too. Uh-huh. She got my number from a friend, and the rest is history. It turns out she knew my older brother, and she gave him her phone number to give to me, but he never did. Thanks, bro. Older brother's still jealous of you. So you eventually ran into her when you were like 24, and she was 20 or 21. She did tell me early on that she wouldn't have sex until marriage, and I wasn't at all deterred. It was actually a breath of fresh air from what I was used to. At this point, then, you got enough and had enough experiences. You're like, hey, whatever. I know you preach by getting to know a person first, and I understand why, but we moved in together after 3 months of dating. Smack! Are you nuts? I get clearly this girl turned out to be a good girl. One of the rare ones. Yes, they're rare, and they are. It's possible, they're rare. But still, 3 months, you moved in together, you nuts. And we were married 6 months later. Smack! You are freaking crazy and playing with fire. Didn't you learn anything from Nikki? Well, you got lucky, dude. He says, I know, smack. But we just celebrated 17 years of being married, and we have 4 kids together. Well, I'm glad it worked. And I know what you're all thinking. Are you sure those 4 kids are yours? Well, given the fact that she didn't want to have sex before marriage, and obviously you could tell the first time you had sex and all that, and her bio, her character, fingers crossed that she's the good one. We are still going strong. It took our first 3 years of marriage to somewhat come out of, for me to come out of my asshole Chad mode, but I put her through the ringer during that time. But the first time I held our firstborn daughter, I knew immediately I needed to do better. So you were still kind of an a-hole when you met her, but she was still attracted to you. So it goes to show you, even though she's a virgin and a good girl's going for the bad boy. Until this point, I wasn't exactly a romantic person, but I did everything I could to be a good husband that my wife deserved. Well, that's good, as long as she's being the good wife that you deserve. I never cheated or hurt her. I treated her like any other girl. I started being sweeter and giving her more attention and planned more dates and trips together. Well, that's good. Make her feel loved, as long as she's making you feel loved and is a good wife to you. She was completely different than what I was used to. When she was 18 when we met, even though we didn't see each other for 2 years, she had never been in a relationship. She was too focused on school for that. She's always been strong-willed, and she shut out several of our friends when they tried to hook up with her. Well, that's good to hear. She's a country girl raised on a farm, and she was used to manual labor. She knows I watch her channels and has watched them with me occasionally, but I end up telling her a lot of the content I watch here. Well, if she doesn't hate me, that's a good thing. At one point, she asked me why I watched this content so much and asked if she was doing something wrong. Well, you can kind of see why she might think you're doing something wrong if you're watching this from that perspective. I explained that eventually our kids will be dating, and in this day and age, it scares the hell out of me. I told her I worry about what to tell my son about women, and also what to tell our 3 daughters about dating. In her words, I've never been a weak woman, and I'm not about to raise weak daughters that will let some Chad come and ruin their relationships. This definitely made me feel better. Well, that's great. A lot of people that watch me, especially older ones, especially women, is because they don't want... The female viewers have told me in comments and emails and direct messages on Instagram, they watch me because A, they hate the feminist movement, and B, they have sons and daughters that they don't want to be impacted by all this fucked up world here. But a lot of fathers watch me too. But newsflash, guess what? Things were fucked up 25 years ago with you and Nikki. So human nature hasn't changed in 25 years. It's just easier for bullshit to happen thanks to social media and dating apps. The reason I'm sending you this story is twofold. One is so that some of your young subscribers will know what not to do in a relationship, and the other is so that the relationship guys out there know that there are good women and great relationships and they're not a myth. They're just very hard to find. Yes, I've been saying that for most of this channel here. Worm Sodom Gomorrah 2.0, I've been saying that for years, but there are some good ones out there. It's just very hard to find. To the young guys out there, do not let these modern feminists tell you that wanting a monogamous relationship is bad, or that open relationships are good, that worrying about body count or wanting an open phone policy, and not being okay with girls hanging out with male friends is misogynistic and insecure. Don't be afraid to have boundaries, and don't be afraid to walk away if they are crossed. Again, thank you, SSM, for what you do. You're welcome, man, and thank you for sending in your story. I'm glad so much that you got rid of fucking Nikki the Terrible, completely out of your life, got your shit together. If anything, she taught you reality. You had the worst possible first girlfriend and girl lose your virginity to. But if you learned all that, be honest, if you didn't go through all that hell, you may not have been experienced enough to meet your now wife when you did and learn things you learned, and you may have made mistakes with her and it didn't work out. Who knows? But what happened, happened. And I'm glad you watched the channel. I encourage your kids to watch it one day when they're old enough, and you can bestow wisdom that you learned there. But if they're teenagers, they're going to be teenagers. And, of course, teenagers think they know everything, so just be careful there. But you're right. Guys, don't let the modern feminists make you think that, a body count shouldn't matter, or open relationships shouldn't matter, or girls hanging out with other dudes shouldn't matter. Bullshit. We know what listening to them gets you to. But, again, for all you guys out there, he has his reason for sharing the story, and I have mine. Gentlemen, this is what can happen. That a pretty gal that a guy becomes attached to could cause problem in his life. Of course, he chose to be with her. He chose to drop out of school. He chose to do stupid shit. That's on him. He was young, and I get it. But, men, we're all responsible for our actions here. But, let me tell you, don't let your little head do all the thinking. Otherwise, you could derail a good life that you have or a promising future. It's not worth it, And you get a whole world full of women. You can get laid. But throwing it all away for one of these types, oh, man. But anyhow, bro, good for you. I'm glad your life's doing well. And I guarantee you, Nikki probably has multiple kids from multiple daddies, and her life's probably a disaster. And I'm sure that sexy, young, 5'4" blonde with the big D cups probably weighs 350 pounds now and looks like, Gilbert Grape's mom from the movie What's Eating Gilbert Grape. All you guys in your 40s now I'm fucking talking about there. Got to do a throwback to Johnny Depp, the early years. Anyhow, guys, there you go. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And, guys, you got a good story to share, send it my way. strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. And if it's a good story, I'll definitely cover it. Keep them coming. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.